This is a special edition of Small Business Breakthroughs with us today. It's December 15th. And today we're going to get to learn more about small business resources, the life and times and the experiences of Mike Bowers, who's the director of the Columbus State Small Business Development Center. So we got a lot of good questions, a lot of good history, a lot of good knowledge. Mike has a unique perspective from kind of the top of the sphere. And if you have a small business, if you're starting a small business or work in the ecosphere, this will be a great conversation for you to hear, a wealth of resources and a wealth of knowledge for today's business breakthrough. Before we get started, though, the business breakthrough is strongly supported by and in partnership with the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. And Chad, would you like to tell us more about the deck?
Well, hey, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us today. Very excited for any of these types of events because it's fantastic that Central Ohio has such great resources. Been privileged to really be in economic development since the early 2000s. Probably got really involved in it around 2004, and had the privilege to really start working close with the Small Business Development Center around that time. So it's been nearly 20 years that I've had the privilege to work with Mike and his team. And I know the team's turned over just a little bit, but not too much. And that's a tribute to him and the others that have really created such a great team here in Central Ohio. But at the deck, we were created in 2009 by the city of Dublin. And very excited to certainly say that we're still thriving and still host over 100 businesses at the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center, certainly one of the largest centers in the United States. And we have such an impressive graduation record. We've graduated over 200 businesses during that time from the deck, and over 85% of those businesses are still in business, which really is the number that we're proud of for them for achieving such great success. But we love partnering with SBDC, and I know Mike is at the deck right now utilizing one of our offices. So we love hosting people at the facility. So if there's anybody out there that's maybe looking for some new space or some first-time space, give us a call, and I'll put my information in the chat. Because the beginning of the year is always our number one time of the year for people that might want to get out and have a mailbox or a space to have conference meetings and things like that. And we have very, very affordable space that you can be able to utilize. So it's a good thing to be able to look at for something new in the beginning of the year. But excited for what Mike's going to share this morning. So looking forward to it. And happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all that to everybody that's on today, and a blessed New Year.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Chaz. Thanks for the partnership and continued support of the deck. And it's interesting, the 85% rate that you stated, that's nearly the inverse, right, of all small businesses. You hear this rule of thumb that gets promoted sometimes, that 8 of 10 don't make it, or 9 of 10 don't make it. And you're exactly the opposite with your graduating businesses. So congratulations to you guys. Something very right is happening at the Dublin.
Well, we're excited to play some role, whether it's educational programming that we provide, certainly connecting our tenants. Over 50% of our businesses at the deck do business with at least one other tenant of the deck. And so when you figure a lot of collaboration going on between different businesses, it's just a tremendous community. And it just, a lot of that just happens. It's nothing that we necessarily push on them. It's just when you try to bring them together, we have social events just to bring our tenants together. It just oftentimes just naturally happens. And that's what's wonderful about entrepreneurs. Willing to keep their doors open and work with each other. So excited about that.
Yeah, a lot of smart people walking around the hallways. I've been there a few times. Very, very cool. Thank you, and happy holidays to you as well, Charles. So now we'll get started with our main conversation, and we're going to talk again with Mike Bowers, the Center Director for the SBDC at the Columbus State Community College. Mike and I work together and have now for 3 or 4 years through and beyond the COVID pandemic, which saw a new level of resources and awareness for many things for small businesses. So Mike, I guess to get us started, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and kind of your path to the director of the SBDC.
Well, thank you, TJ, and thanks to Chaz and the deck and Susie, who's in the room right across the hall from me here at the deck. It's a great partnership. This is a great facility. Again, as you mentioned, it's a tribute to the community, I think, that gets built here, that folks can work together, coordinate together. And, it's always great to have, other entrepreneurs that are in the middle of things, that if you have a question as an entrepreneur, you can walk next door and say, hey, you running into anything like this? Are you seeing anything? And I think that's really what makes the deck successful in these types of support organizations. But yeah, I appreciate the opportunity today. Obviously, I'm usually the one doing the interviewing on this program. This is a really important program for me, because I think it really helps share a lot of insights and thoughts from business experts around the community. And what's cool is that, these are all people typically that I know are experts, and I can reach out to and say, hey, can you come in and share? And, they all do. And it's really cool to have that. We're into our 3rd year of doing this. So we're really excited, and we're excited about everybody who's joining us today live. And if you have questions for myself or TJ or Bruce or anybody, really, don't hesitate to put those in the chat. But, my background, I've been with the SBDC really since 2002. And at that time, we were with the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, and we shifted over to Columbus State in 2004. The SBDC in Central Ohio has been here since 1985. So it's been around for a while, and, doing a lot of great work supporting entrepreneurs and things of that nature. My path that's kind of led me to this is that, I have a undergrad from the University of North Alabama. I did wear my Alabama shirt today for Chaz, but I have I went to the University of North Alabama. I have an undergrad in economics and finance. And so I always had this kind of bent for business and wanted to go into business, and went into banking. I worked in banking for about 10 years. And after that, I shifted out, went to the Ohio State University. I got a master's degree in public administration so that I could go and really get into more economic development kind of stuff, not really thinking I would get into this SBDC kind of world. But what was interesting is I was working on my degree at Ohio State. The first class that we take, it's a policy class. So it's kind of the weeding out class, for lack of a better word, but it kind of teaches you about policy formulation, development, and evaluation. And they said, the assignment, which took up the whole semester, was to go you're going to pick a public law, and you're going to tell the history of it, and you're going to track it, and you're going to talk to somebody who's doing it, and, to have this report at the end. And I actually picked the Small Business Development Center program. So not intending to do anything with it, but I said, okay, I understand business in the private sector. This is kind of a private sector kind of thing. So that's what I ended up doing. And I always say that helped me when I went to actually apply for a job at the Columbus Chamber, even though I wasn't applying directly for the SBDC, because I knew all about the SBDC. So I could talk to what's going on. Yeah. So, but anyway, when I was at the chamber, I ran the Columbus Chamber's small business activities, as well as ran a venture capital association. So now I've got this background in banking and this background in investment and venture capital. We're really proud of Columbus Venture Network program that helped launch the Angel Network here in Central Ohio back in, I don't know, 2004 or 2003 or four, something like that. So that was really cool, and that has continued to grow, and it made a big difference from an investment standpoint for small businesses. But in 2002, the opportunity came up for me to get involved with the Small Business Development Center, which was also at the Columbus Chamber. So I got to become the director there. And then we shifted to Columbus State, and it's been really cool. I never thought that I'd be doing this 20 some years later, but the nice thing about it is that we have great people that I get to work with, and we've had a little bit of turnover, some new people coming in, but as I said, I mean, it's not a lot of turnover. We've had a lot of the same folks that have been with us for a while. And I think the cool thing is that we're able to not just sit here and do, okay, this is the SBDC grant, do this. We're able to kind of look at the community and say, okay, what's needed? What can we do? How can we make impact? And how can we kind of shift and tweak and add new stuff? Give you an example. I do the base, which is our startup workshop every month, along with Bruce Walters. And, this is something that was created and first launched in 2001. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've been able to take the same thing and kind of tweak it and modify it and say, okay, this is important. This is important. We got to add this. We got to add this. This isn't quite as valuable. And we're able to come up with, I think, some really cool stuff. And that's what I think kind of keeps me plugged in, is that we can look at the entrepreneurial ecosystem and say, here's some need, and we can address it. So that's kind of the cool thing. And that's kind of what's kept me hanging around this long.
Yeah, and let's actually step into that a little bit. So, you've got a program itself that's been around for 22-ish years, right? With Base. You have yourself led through, and let me take a sidebar real fast. So for the small business owners or entrepreneurs listening or watching the recording, Mike has a perspective not many of us get to have. He's at the top of the sphere. So Mike gets to see challenges across a large sample of businesses, right? Many people are working in their business, and some of them are working on their business. But Mike, your view is one of trends and macro effects on small businesses, often, regardless of industry, right? So what I wanted to ask you was, thinking through all those years, we've got the .com bust, we've got the financial crisis, we have COVID, and you've kept the same program running the same time, obviously changing. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the world of small business throughout your career, thinking through that 20-year span?
I think the biggest thing really is the technology impact, because when I first started into this space, it was this .com bust, and I started in '99 with the chamber,
yeah,
and was running this venture capital association. And what we would do is we would have entrepreneurs that were looking for investment come in and pitch their idea to a group of investors. We did this in a public forum so that individuals could come and watch and hear the questions, and other people that were in the audience that may have an interest in being a part of the opportunity could reach out to the entrepreneurs and things. So it was kind of like a Shark Tank before it was a Shark Tank, right? Excuse me. And it was, I just remember in early 2000 doing some of these events and bringing folks in, and there was a big statewide venture capital thing and stuff like that. And you had these .com companies that were rolling in there looking for, $500 million or something like that. I mean,
Right.
everything
Right.
you read about what was going on back then, you got to see. So, coming down off of that, it really, it actually kind of dissipated relatively quickly, and things kind of started to stabilize a little bit. But yeah, excuse me. What we did is, I got to see the impact of, I think, technology coming in, because I remember being just out on a run, thinking in my head, why would anybody need a website?
Right.
If people were asking me this, and I knew that they did, but I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's the best response? And because that was a question, why do
Yeah.
I need to have something like this? And now obviously the business is, you know, that is an extension of the business itself. So you can't do it's very difficult to do business if you don't have some sort of web presence. And if that web presence isn't up to the expectation of your customer, then that's going to be, have a detrimental impact. So I think that the impact of technology has been huge. I'm interested to see what happens from this point forward, because I've watched this happen. Now we have the artificial intelligence components and different things like that that are starting to reach in here. So it'll be interesting to see, what impact that has. The other thing that I think is interesting, especially as we relate to Central Ohio, is that I've been able to see this kind of business is kind of business, entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship. If you're going to start a small business, there's some stuff that you need to think about, but I don't know that it was really well defined. I think you're starting to see more organizations. You got the SBDC, you've got organizations like yours, you've got other coaches and different things like that that are really starting to say, okay, here's what the entrepreneur needs to be successful. This is what the entrepreneur needs to think about, versus just, hey, let's just get started and we'll figure it out as we go along.
Yeah.
The one thing that we did, and I think this is, we did this initially, a partnership with Rev One Ventures, which is a high-tech venture oriented incubator here near the OSU campus. And they had put together this program to help entrepreneurs, kind of their intake mechanism. So it was all about, let's figure out how you as an entrepreneur can learn as much about your business and your product and your customers and your audience, and build out your business model before you start spending a bunch of money. Because I think prior to that, the model was, let's get money and let's just start throwing money at stuff. And
Especially.
yeah, so they had put this together, and I had reached out to them, and I was involved in it at that time, and I said, how can we do something like this for more traditional businesses, Main Street businesses? Does that even make sense? And so we worked with them to put together a program that kind of laid that out for traditional businesses. And we did it jointly a couple of times, and that was fine. But from there is where we built out our BizStar 2.0 program that Kevin Hammond on our team does. And I think he is on team 77 of these things that he's done. But it's a 4-week program that he does. And it's all about really helping the traditional entrepreneur understand their market, their customers, do all of these types of things so that they can start to avoid some of these mistakes that in the past they had to learn by doing.
Yep.
and it cost them money and time. So they would get out to a certain point and then they'd have to back up and different things of that nature. Pivoting's one thing, but when you're just making mistake after mistake after mistake and throwing a bunch of money at it, it can become disheartening, number one, but it can also be, obviously problematic to the business. So what we want them to do is think about how this can work before they ever get into it. And we've been really successful with that. I mean, we've had the opportunity to share our startup process a few different times at the National SBDC conference and different things like that. And I think it makes a lot of difference because it just saves people money and time and allows them to create something that's going to have the better chance of succeeding.
Yeah. And to your point of disheartening, that's exactly right. When a lot of small businesses can't take too many financial blows, right? They can just only error so many times before they're out of capital, which is a mathematical formula. It seems that many entrepreneurs are the same. They're not robots, right? And they become tied into and in love with their businesses. It can only take so many stumbling blocks before they lose a little bit of motivation or drive or belief in themselves.
Right.
So a lot of changes since then, mostly on technology. And to your point, Mike, it's funny because I remember the why do I need a website question.
Yeah.
And every day or week, I get the why do I need to worry about AI question, right? And 20 years from now will be an interesting retrospect as to the way that looks. So, a lot of changes along the way. You've seen a lot of businesses come and go. You've created a lot of programs and implemented a lot of programs. What if you had to name the top 3 skills, we'll say, for entrepreneurs that have endured those 20 years, right? So when you're looking 20 years back and 20 years forward, what are 3 skills entrepreneurs should work on to have made them successful? And then for those folks maybe joining us just starting out, to make them successful. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think that what an entrepreneur needs to do as a small business owner, the number one thing, and again, this gets back to this conversation around BizStart and things, because we always talked about, understanding your customer and stuff like that, but now it's just so critical and it's so able to be done, understanding your market, understanding your customer. I don't care if I'm ready to start, I want to think about this, doing this kind of market research, understanding the demographic and psychographic, or you're in business and you've been in business, understanding who your customer is the number one thing. And I think that as a small business owner, the challenge a lot of folks run into is that they want to start because they have a passion around something. And they get into their head that they have to, I think this works. I would buy this. So everybody's going to want to buy it, right? My friends and family all said this was the greatest idea and things of that nature. So they don't really go out and try to figure this out. And then once they get going, that's where they make these mistakes. And you and I've talked about this with, more existing entrepreneurs. I mean, this is the perfect time. You can do this anytime, obviously, but the end of the year seems to be the time when everybody wants to, okay, I got to prep for 24. I got to get ready. I got to do that. This fourth quarter of the year is a great time to kind of take that step back, start to, really see the forest versus all the trees, and reconnect with your customers in your market. Yeah. Reaching out to them, talking to them. What are they looking for? What are they doing? Because the worst thing that happens to, I think, an existing entrepreneur is that they get complacent, thinking that I've got this customer and I've had this customer, and it's not always a price thing. I mean, it's the customer changes, the customer starts to shift what they need, but you don't shift and change because you haven't kept in touch with them. So I think really that connection with the market, that connection with your customer is super critical as when you're looking at this. I think another thing that's really important, I think that this is going to sound weird because of my background in banking and finance and stuff like that, but funding is not the most critical piece of a business at the startup phase or whatever. I think that especially at the startup, people get into this. I've got to come up with what I'm going to do. And I got to have this money and I got to figure out, how I'm going to do this. And if I can't get the money, I can't do the business. And in most traditional businesses, that's not necessarily true. And not having a good understanding of your numbers is where businesses really start to run into problems because they, if you're at the startup phase, not understanding what your startup funding needs to be, not being realistic about that, and not being realistic about where that's going to come from. And as an existing business, and it's always amazing to me the number of entrepreneurs, the number of owners, CEOs of small businesses that don't understand their financials. And, you can be making sales and you can have revenue coming in, but that doesn't mean that your business is going to be successful. I remember back this would have been probably in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and I don't know if they still do this or not, but Business First used to have this awards program, which is called the Fast 50, right? It's the 50 fastest revenue growing companies in Central Ohio.
By top line revenue, by sales.
Top line revenue. And they'd have this big banquet and all this kind of stuff. And inevitably, the next year, 2 or 3 of the top 5 be out of business.
Yeah. They
This
couldn't their growth.
ongoing kind of thing. And they didn't understand their numbers. They didn't understand that they were basically growing themselves out of business because they didn't have the equity to support going forward. So understanding that is really critical. And I think that's really, really important for an entrepreneur. And, I think the third thing really, it comes down to the entrepreneur itself. I mean, I think it is this perseverance. It is knowing where you want to go, understanding the mission and the vision. And I'll tell you, I mean, when I first started, so back, when I first started and I was looking at business plans and stuff like that, I didn't really care. And maybe it's because I came from banking. I didn't care what the mission and vision was, whatever, that's fine. I want to see the numbers and I just would skip to that. But really, over time, I've just found that this focus on this high level strategy and understanding why you're doing what you're doing and what you're doing, I think is really critical for small business owners because this keeps them on track. It's one thing if you're the CEO of Nationwide. I mean, you got all kinds of people and boards and shareholders and everybody else keeping you on track, right? But as an entrepreneur, where you've got a few employees and you're doing your thing and it's kind of all you having that kind of true north to keep you moving, I think it's really important.
So, and again, just for everybody on the call or watching, we're interviewing and speaking with Mike Bowers, the director of the SBDC at Columbus State Community College. It has been in the small business ecosystem here in Central Ohio for better than 20 years. Seen, I assume if we looked at the numbers, thousands of small businesses come and go. And from that vantage point, Mike, just to kind of recap there, understanding the customer, right? So why are your customers buying from you? What are their needs? Are their needs changing? And I'll add a little bit to this from my own experience. Quiet customers should scare you. That's you know, I have a very simple mind, so you know, sometimes taking things down to sentences helps people like me. And quiet customers should scare you. If they're complaining, they still want to work with you, right? And if you've spoken to them and they're happy, that's good. But sometimes the quiet can be a little too good. And what an important point about knowing your numbers. I've never heard anybody say, like you just did so clearly, you know, they grew themselves out of business. And we jokingly say the top line is vanity, the bottom line is sanity. So you have to, you know, growth is great as long as you know that it's profitable growth that you can fund. Because to your point, Mike, these small businesses don't have access to equity markets, you know, and debt access is limited. So great advice there. And then, you know, as you've seen it come and go, the vision. This is probably the most overlooked and critical piece of this. And it doesn't mean a mission statement with 52 words of nonsense, right? That's not what it is. Is it a vision you can see and frankly sell to employees and to investors or to customers? So for those of you watching, when you get that type of clarity, you know, over 20 years and thousands of businesses, what should folks be working on? Know your customers that you're selling to, know your numbers, and have a clear vision for decision making. Is that a fair summary, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. And you know, Bruce and I see this, you know, every month. I mean, we do this base class and we go through this, and you know, we've this program has developed over time. And literally, this program has developed over, you know, 20 years to get to where it is today. And I think it really does a lot to get people to understand that. And I want to make one other point here. We talk about this base program that we do, and it's 3 hours long. We do it once a month. It's 3 hours long. I do the narrative component, so I talk for 3 hours, which is a good time. And Bruce sits back and answers all the questions. So we ask people to put questions in the chat, and he'll have, you know, 150, 200 questions over that time, and he answers all of them. So that's tribute to Bruce's typing skills and ability to kind of jump in there and do that. But we developed this, and we've gotten to this because we want people to understand, again, these key points about understanding the customer and why you need to do this and all of that. And I see a lot of these programs about how to start a business from different support organizations, different coaches, and different things like that, where it's really the mechanical nuts and bolts. You know, this is an LLC, and you know, this is how you go to a bank, and this is how you do that, all of which is valuable. But they don't have this other piece of it. They don't really have that conversation. So when people come to us and say, I want to start a business, and we say, you got to go through base first, sometimes they want to push back because they want to move so fast. But, you know, these are things that we've seen people that have been successful have done these things. People have not been successful, have not done these things. And I think as an entrepreneur is looking for kind of support, or maybe there's this coaching program they're going to join, or there's, you know, some other things they're going to join, just be, you know, I'm not saying I got to come to the SBDC, but just be cognizant of what are they teaching you and what are they going to offer you. Because I've seen a lot of people that have gotten into a mode of, let me spend a bunch of money and I don't get the results out of it. And it's really important as you're doing that to think about, okay, what is it I really need?
Yeah.
These are some of the things that we've talked about.
And that's fair, Mike. And I think this is a decent place for a little shameless self-promotion, right? So we've got these things. If we're entrepreneurs, we need to start looking for, you know, who are our customers? Do we understand them? Do we talk to them? Do we know our numbers? Do we understand cash flow? Do we have proper financial statements? Are we keeping our books? Do we have a clear vision? So if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm on the call, I'm watching the video and I'm thinking, maybe or maybe not, like, what's literally my next step to understand those things?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have an interest in connecting with our SBDC, so if you're in the Central Ohio region, our website is sbdccolumbus.com. You can go there, check stuff out. You can email us at sbdc@cscc.edu, which I would also be remiss if I didn't say, I mentioned that we moved to Columbus State. So Columbus State Community College here in Central Ohio has been a great landing spot for us because it's allowed us to do everything that we're doing. And they've been really supportive of the things that we've been doing. So I always go and make a shout out to Columbus State. But, if you're not in the Central Ohio, if you go to the ASBDC site, which I think Bruce will put it here in the chat, this is that is a place you can put your zip code in wherever you are in the country, and it'll direct you to the closest SBDC.
Yeah,
and
thanks.
They may not do exactly like we do, but they are charged to support entrepreneurs going forward. But I think it's really critical for individuals to find that kind of support, because in the base class, one of the things that I always say, everybody talks about being an entrepreneur is risky. You don't want to be an entrepreneur. You don't want to open a small business. You don't be risk, right? Well, two things. One, if I'm working for a larger company, it's more risky for me to be sitting at a desk at a larger company where I don't have control over my future.
Yeah.
And come Friday, there could be boxes on my desk.
Yep. In a safe job, right? That's
right. So, and I've seen it, man. I've seen it where people have come into work and there's, people standing at the desk and here's the box, clean your stuff out, and I'm going to direct, walk out with you. I mean, I threaten Bruce with that all the time, but he does a good job. I don't have to do that. But I think that's more risky than going in and finding something that you're passionate about, that people want, finding a gap in that market, finding a problem and creating a solution for it, and doing it as a small business owner. And I think where the risk comes in as a small business owner is because you don't know what you're doing.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
energy in the wrong direction is not good, right? A busy, driven, motivated, energetic person can sink the ship faster if it's not guided in some direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think being able to really channel what you're trying to do in the right direction, and being open, to adjust and pivot and change as needed. The other thing is we've had entrepreneurs that have come in and it's just, I'm doing this. And we're like, well, okay, but have you thought about this? No, we're doing this. And I'll tell you a story. When I was doing the venture capital thing, so this predates the SBDC. There was a gentleman that would come to us, and he had this interesting idea in 2000, right? Where it would, for your computers, remember the computers, the big computers we had with the big box on the back, the fan running and all that, where he would sell these things and he could put it on there and it would, I think it smelled or something, freshen the room or something like that. So he was just hell bent that that's what he was going to do, and he's going to get venture capital, and this was going to be where he was going. And I remember he showed up, nobody seemed to be interested. and then he kind of vanished. And then maybe a year or so later, he kind of showed up again, maybe at a different place, and then he's got pushed back over to us, and same deal, same plan, same thing. Got to have money, money, money. Got to do this. And then this happened for like 2 or 3 times, right? So this extended out like 8 years, and but he never modified what he was trying to do. It was always an issue with the venture community or the funding community. Mm-hmm. They didn't like him, or they didn't like what was going on, and different things like that. And he never pivoted to get it to where, maybe it would appeal to the market. And because he waited so long, his market window closed.
Yeah, the monitor shrank, right? That was the that
Yeah.
was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes back to one of your tenants. If he knew his customers, meaning he knows his markets and he knows the technology, looking inward would have been a little easier for him, maybe to see. Yeah. And just to go back to something really quickly that you mentioned about the safety and the job versus the entrepreneur or the small business owner, a lot of people overlook, Mike, or at least in my experience, a business is inventoriable, right? When you leave your job, you're not likely to have a pension in today's market. When you build a business, there could be a significant and very real payoff at the end of that. Right. And that's, when you think from a perspective of what can I inventory, that's also another benefit. But I love what you said about the safe, secure job. I don't know that that's a thing anymore.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So along those lines too, what are your thoughts about the environment today versus the environment, at some other point in time, or as far as starting a new venture? Would you rate today's environment as better or worse than previous environments, or even thinking we're in a post-COVID era, people are still trying to figure out what does the market look like, what does the world look like? AI is kind of inviting new things as well. What are your thoughts on today's market if I'm thinking of starting a small business or growing a small business?
I think that today's market is still a great opportunity to start a small business. So if you think about a time that wasn't a good time to start a small business, you shift back to 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
We had that recession that was going there due to the real estate. I mean, that had a huge impact on the economy. I mean, and the economy relating to business funding, banking, the whole thing. Yeah, I remember businesses that were successful, strong, kind of small to mid-sized businesses.
Yeah.
That when the economy shifted, then the bank's risk tolerance shifted. And then all of a sudden, this business that the bank loved in 2007, in 2009, they were calling their loans due because of their risk tolerance had changed. And you saw a little bit of risk of that, with the Silicon Valley Bank closures and some of the closures around that. The fact that, I mean, there's been a few, but the fact that it hasn't spread dramatically, I think has been helpful. We did our capital crash course program last week. That's the 18th of those that we've done. It's a capital conference, and we had a panel of bankers that I had the opportunity to talk with, and all of them are really still bullish on small businesses. They're, hey, bring me your opportunity and show me how it can be successful and how we can be a part of what you're trying to do, and we're interested in doing it. Whereas 2008, they weren't interested in doing it. I mean, banks just were not going to have anything to do with it at that time. I think it's a good time. I think there's opportunity, and you know, we've got some ups and downs with the economy. I mean, inflation jumped up pretty high. The inflation rates are starting to come down now, but we always got to remember, I mean, just because the inflation rate's down to whatever it is now, 2.5 last month,
Yeah.
doesn't discount the point that it jumped 9%, a year ago. So
Where it
price,
started from matters, is what they're
yeah,
saying.
yeah, the economy and prices are kind of moving around in different things, but um there's still a lot of opportunity for small businesses, and there's a lot of support for small businesses. And when I talk about support, I think that we've always had this challenge, um, where small business owners would come into our office and I want to start a small business. Okay, great. Tell me what you want to do. I need X number of dollars, and how are we going to fund that? Well, you're going to show me where the grants are.
Yeah, yeah,
And for a for-profit business, I mean, really being able to focus on finding grants for your business is probably not going to be, an option. I mean, you're not going to find anything. Unfortunately, we went through the pandemic. That was unfortunate enough, but to support businesses, you started hearing the G word a lot, and people got in their head that, oh well, I'm hearing grant, so I'm gonna jump in here. Well, that one was for those, typically were for existing businesses that were impacted by COVID, so weren't for startups. And there was money that was valuable to provide support. So you helped us, along with some other folks, during the pandemic, reaching out and doing some work with entrepreneurs. But not having, as an entrepreneur, as a small business at this point, being realistic about what you have, and if you're able to find the market and you're able to find the gap, it's definitely a great opportunity for you to start a business. Maybe different parts of the country are a little bit different, but I will tell you that in Central Ohio, I was talking to a gentleman the other day that does work in different parts of the state, and he's always talking about how strong and how high the energy is for the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Central Ohio.
yeah.
And there's a lot of support. Again, like, it's not grant support per se, but there's a lot of opportunities to make sure that you're going down the right path. And I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think that looking to take advantage of the new stuff, the technology, new, you can do a lot more market research now than you ever were able to do before. So being able to get that, I think, is really important. And it's all there. But again, if you, I'm going to say this, you don't do it right.
Yeah.
You don't use the steps. We have 5 steps that we recommend people to do. And I always say, don't skip the steps, don't jump steps.
Right, right.
Because you don't want to do that. If you stay on track, I think that you can be in pretty good shape, and you can actually have something that you can build, you can be proud of, and will basically work for you, your employees, and the people you serve.
Yeah. So we got about 5 minutes left to give a talk with Mike Bowers, who's the head of the center director of the Small Business Development Center at Columbus State Community College. And Mike, I'm going to try to encapsulate some of the things that you told us for a couple takeaways for the listeners. And
Sure.
Again, you've probably been adjacent or supportive to or involved in thousands of small businesses of all different levels, and with a finger on the pulse of the ecosystem. So if our audience has a few takeaways, and I'll throw a couple out and you correct me if I'm wrong, it would be definitely understand your customers, know when they're changing, know when their needs are changing. And you said something very important that a lot of small business owners overlook. It's not always a price thing. Expensive but fitting is certainly a strategy for your price. So know your numbers, realize that sales does not mean profitability. and you can indeed, I love this term that you mentioned, grow yourself out of business. That's certainly something. Have a clear vision of what you want to do. And that's such an important thing. I'm glad you brought it up, Mike, because how do you know if any decision you make is right or wrong if you don't know where you're going, right? That's just so, the vision keeps you from the winds of the day, right?
Right.
And that's so important with limited energy, limited money. So knowing your customers, knowing your numbers, keeping a clear vision, and you said it really well when you said it's, there are steps to take, right? So busy does not mean productive. Being head down and driven could be driving you in the wrong way and out of business more quickly. So understand the framework and get help. And it sounds like if you're in Central Ohio, the BASE program is probably a really good place to start, even if you're in business and want to make sure you didn't skip one of the 5 steps. Is that a fair summary of today?
Yeah, I think so. And you're absolutely right on the BASE program. I mean, we have people all the time that come in, hey, I want to start a business and I don't know anything else about it. I got an idea. Great. BASE is great. But we also have people that, started and didn't know the best way to do that. And now they're running into challenges and they backtrack and they come back into BASE. So I think it's a great opportunity to do to really get an understanding of what's going on with that. But I think that as a small business owner, this point that we made about the vision is super critical, because if you don't know where you're going, anything will get you kind of around it, whether you'll get there or not. So having that, I think, is what can keep you moving in the right directions.
Yeah, the map is sometimes shockingly easy to draw once you know the destination, right? But that's the hard part. And maybe you would disagree with me, but from my experience, that's why a lot of people skip the vision, because it's hard. It's difficult. You have to say no to a lot of things when you say yes to one, and it's hard. At least maybe you can comment on that. That's been my experience, that people don't want to say no to things early on.
No, I think that's exactly right, because people that want to start a small business, they have the big idea. This is kind of step one of what we talk about in BASE. Everybody gets this big idea. I got this great idea. I'm sitting on the couch and boom, this hits me to be the greatest idea in the world. Everybody in the world is going to want it because I want it. And this is how we're going to do it. And, but then you've got to actually determine, can that idea be a business?
Yeah.
I would say that, businesses make you money, hobbies, you spend money on, you lose money, right? So, being able to say, okay, what is my vision? What is my mission? What is out there in the market that is not being done? And you can do it around what it is you want to do. But when your point, I love that, is where they say, I don't want to say no, because maybe, okay, I wanted to do this, this, and this. Well, my analysis says I can do this, but I need to do this,
Right.
not what I thought about. And they don't want to back off of that.
Yeah.
That's why they tend to run into problems.
It's very hard, especially when you've just decided this is going to be your livelihood, right? That's
right.
That's a difficult thing to make. So we've hit our hour. This has been a wonderful conversation. Do you have any parting words, closing comments for us?
The last sentence, I think, that you did, that as a small business, that this is going to be your livelihood. And I think sometimes that the small business owner doesn't get into a real understanding. So we're talking about mission and we're talking about vision, but as part of this, what are you trying to have this business do? I can go out and sell stuff and do things and, have a hobby business, or, have something that's small that, I'm going to continue to work, 40, 50 hours a week on my job, and do this kind of on the side and things of that nature. But as they were thinking about doing this, initially it was that I was going to be able to quit my job. I was going to be able to have this. I was going to be able to hire employees and make a difference in the community. Well, don't discount that part of it. And I think that people stop thinking about, when we're talking about the financials, we're talking about building the projections about what you're trying to do. They're not really building a business that may meet those expectations that they have. And if their expectation is that this is going to replace their income and replace their job and, be something, if you make $50,000 a year, you can't make $50,000 a year in a business and be able to replace your income, right?
Right.
So really understanding what that means. But I always say you want to create a business that will do what you want it to do. And part of that is what you want it to do for you. And a lot of people get into, I'm going to create a business and I'm going to do this. And I hope people will buy my stuff and hopefully I'll sell some stuff. And, you probably see this all the time. Bruce sees it, I'm not going to pay myself.
Right.
First year or two, and then that's year 3 or whatever. I mean, why would you not pay yourself? Why is that's not the point of what you're trying to do. So, really creating this business that'll do what you want it to do and will do what you want it to do for you. And that gets into the whole mission and vision stuff. But I think people kind of miss that part of it because they get into this mode of, I'm going to be a small business owner. And I am a small business owner. Look at, I sold this and I have this revenue and things like that. And granted, I'm still working at the Walmart as a greeter. And I'm, working 75, 90 hours a week on this business. And
Yeah. And your time's not free, right? That's an important point for me.
it's a great point.
So thanks for closing us out. Thanks for the conversation. Bruce, am I correct in that you are answering the questions in the chat as they're coming in?
That's right.
Okay, perfect. Everybody, thank you for logging in. Hopefully it's been informative and taught you something, a great way to spend the morning. Mike, as always, it's wonderful to talk to you. Thanks for inviting me to do this. Hopefully you thought it turned out well.
No, this was fun. I mean, we could have done a Joe Rogan type of thing where we were on here for 3 or 4 hours, but
we'd have lost the crowd at some point in time. But
Yeah.
you're right. All right. Thank you to all. Have a wonderful holiday. Thanks again to the SBDC Center at Columbus State. Thanks again to the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center and all of those others who support us. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys.